I think what vegans need to understand is that
it's clear that it was a supernatural thing, that everyone was shocked that these vegan boys, after 10 days, were were just as strong as the meat eaters. It had to be God's intervention there.
And a lot of people ask me about cheese because cheese is a very nice food. And
my pushback to veganism is that I thought was at least a point of where we agree as a vegan versus carnivore is the issue of we are going to be discussing veganism versus carnivore. It's going to be the battle for the ages, but with a twist. Because in this episode, we'll critique our own points of view and we'll point it all hopefully to the Bible and to see how as Christians you can live either a carnivore or a vegan lifestyle. Welcome to the first episode of the Bible and Beef podcast. We have a good friend here that I'll be having a good discussion with. His name is Mbo. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, brother. Welcome.
Good. Mbo is a personal trainer. He is a brother in Christ and he's a vegan. And I know that's going to be a bit of a controversial discussion and topic today, but we're looking forward to having that conversation as brothers in Christ and from different opposing views when it comes to maybe not necessarily fitness, but definitely when it comes to food and nutrition.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, looking forward to learning from each other, really just exploring different perspectives. And I think at the end of the day, reminding people about what's really important with regards to good lifestyle habits, quality of life, good lifestyle choices and everything that involves helping people live the best quality of life that they can.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So let's get straight into it. I'm sure people are very interested to hear what we're going to discuss today.
Nice.
Let's start off by maybe just sharing your background. How you became a vegan and your walk as well, because we're Bible and Beef as a podcast, so definitely how faith plays into your way of eating and that decision as well.
So I wasn't a trainer yet when I decided to transition to being a vegan. It started actually at a time when I was really unwell, and then an uncle came to visit me, and as we were talking, he started telling me about his journey of reducing animal products and how he was taking in a lot more legumes. And at the time, I already had two vegan friends. We didn't talk much about veganism because one of them was a raw vegan. And at the time, it was far beyond me to consider, I think, totally eliminating animal products. And partly because I didn't know much about what was involved in a plant-based lifestyle. And so after my uncle came to visit me, I decided a couple of weeks after that actually to try and understand what it means to incorporate a lot more plant-based foods in one's diet. This was at the end of 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So at the time, I didn't tell anyone what I was going to do. I decided to go online to try and find a couple of vegans. I wasn't sure, are these people actually healthy? What kind of life do they live? Do they actually go to the gym? And I was actually quite surprised that all of them advised that people gain an awareness of what their health is like before they decide to make a diet change. People, I think, need to understand that a diet change in essence is a lifestyle change as well. And that involves, quite a bit of preparation. And altogether, or too many times, people jump into a different way of eating without actually getting the knowledge, without actually transitioning slowly. And so I thought, okay, let me see if I can reduce. Initially, it was red meat, and then it was white meat. And by the way, this took probably 6 to 9 months of slowly reducing my intake of red meat, and then eventually white meat, and then eggs. And then when it comes to dairy, I didn't struggle as much to take it out of my diet because I've always been lactose intolerant. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved my milkshakes when I was younger, but I always found that when I had an excess of them in a short space of time, I would have a lot of tummy runs, I'd feel really bloated. And so transitioning from milk wasn't really difficult for me. And a lot of people ask me about cheese because cheese is a very nice food, and people use it in a lot of dishes. But I come from a family where we didn't really eat cheese growing up, and so it wasn't hard to actually switch over because I didn't really even eat cheese that much. And so we're in 2019 and I'm doing my research and I'm slowly reducing my intake of animal-based products. This is totally an experiment, and I thought at the time that let me see if this could help me improve my health. I wasn't a personal trainer, like I said, but I really loved going to the gym. I loved learning new ways of working out, different modalities of training. And as I was going through that transition, what surprised me was I didn't have less energy. I found that a lot of joint and kind of pain around my shins that I would have started to reduce. And then I thought, okay, perhaps am I onto something here? But what really made me consider actually taking on a plant-based lifestyle and becoming vegan was as I began to dive into the documentaries of factory farming internationally, and I think a lot of the cruelty around that, it didn't really sit well with me. I mean, we're both African, and you'll know, Ndu, that we come from a culture where meat is king, and so every occasion is an advantage for people. People take advantage of sitting down and having meat, having chicken, having sausages. And so I was initially concerned with how my family would take that. But as I really began to consider, this new knowledge I was getting regarding factory farming and how animal agriculture, especially internationally, is done, I felt like it's not something that I altogether agreed with. And as I was learning about all these different foods that I could introduce that would help provide the nutrients I needed, I felt like I could actually make this transition whilst remaining healthy, getting in the amount of nutrients I needed. And I felt like, okay, I can do all this without having to slaughter a lamb or having to have a calf taken away from its mom right at birth. And so this is just me personally, and I felt that, okay, I think that I can actually continue on this lifestyle. So it was just a continuation of reducing animal products, incorporating more plant-based products. And if I remember correctly, I think the last time I actually had some red or white meat was at a mutual friend's wedding. Actually, this must have been towards the end of 2019. And from there, I never really looked back. It's been about 4 years, I think, right now. And so I'm at a place where I can say I'm 100% plant-based, and I have been able to manage my diet in a way that provides me with all the nutrients I need to live a good and healthy lifestyle.
Okay. I think there you've unpacked quite a lot, and some of the things I think we'll also discuss as we continue in our discussion today, because you've discussed issues of farming and farming practices. You've discussed so many issues, but just to go back to one issue that you brought up that I thought was at least a point of where we agree as a vegan versus carnivore is the issue of diet being a lifestyle. That most people unfortunately make diet a short-term goal.
Very good.
And it's like, I need to look good for that wedding. I need to look good for this event that's coming up. So let me diet to make sure that I can reach that temporary goal. And the reason why most diets then fail is because as soon as that wedding's over, you go back to the way you used to eat. And you end up in a worse off position. Because you gain back all the weight and all of that stuff. So I just wanted to highlight that importance that when you're thinking about how you're going to eat and the lifestyle you want to live, that it is a lifestyle. It's a journey. It's something that is not temporary, but it's something that you're saying, for my life, for longevity, I will continue living this lifestyle for a long time to come.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, just to expand on what you have said, people look at diet as a very temporary intervention to whatever goal that they have. Fitness and diet are closely related. And so, in my experience as a trainer, and as I've spoken to a lot of people, different trainers, I've come to find that the fitness industry has not done a good job of promoting diet as a lifestyle, as making healthy lifestyle choices, or doing something that you are going to continue sustain for many, many years to come. And so I think what helped me transition, again, going back to my story, into veganism, was transitioning very slowly, getting an understanding of the role of diet in one's wellness and in one's health. And so I think our mutual message to our audience out there would be, if you are trying to address a goal that you have fitness-wise, always remember that whatever you're going to do with your nutrition cannot be temporary. It has to be something that you can sustain.
As a personal trainer,
yes,
what percentage would you give to diet versus exercise? So in terms of importance, would you say it's 50-50, or would you change that ratio a bit? What are your thoughts there?
Wow, gosh, that's a very good question. So, I mean, it's we're talking about diet and fitness in one's wellness journey, and probably won't talk about that as much today. There's also that aspect of rest and recovery. And I think people who have been successful on their journeys of wellness, they have understood how to manage those three pillars of their wellness journey. Right now, we're talking about diet, about nutrition, and comparing it to fitness. I've come to understand, and I've come to see that diet is actually way, way more important than fitness itself.
Yeah, I agree.
And whilst that may be surprising to most people, I think that people actually try and address their fitness by making drastic dietary changes and they start from a foundation where dietary wise or health wise they're not at a good place. And so what then happens, for instance, is that you get people who are eating less and moving more, for example, to lose weight. And in that approach, they end up missing out on vital nutrients. They find that they have a lack of energy. They find that, they are not feeling well, and they are wondering what is actually going on. But that's because they have looked at diet, like we said, as a temporary intervention, but have not given the proper time to get to a place where they start with making good diet choices. So I think diet probably, I would say, ranks way more importantly than fitness, because your diet is going to support your fitness journey, but also without going into a micro level of exactly what different nutrients do and so forth. Diet's just critical to our health overall.
Yeah, that's good. I would 100% agree there. If I look at my journey and my story,
yes,
I started off with exercise when
yes,
I started this weight loss journey. For those that don't know,
yes,
I lost to date 50 kgs, over 110 pounds for those that are watching from the States,
yes,
in about 18 months.
Wow.
That was mostly due to keto first, and then
Yes.
into a carnivore diet. But the first few months, which I do count as those 18 months or so,
Yes.
I kept my diet the way it was, but I started
Yes.
with working out.
Right.
I don't regret that, because I think my body needed to also adjust rather than
Yes.
shock the system and
Yes.
change the diet and change my working out or my activity overnight.
Yes.
I thought it would be better to transition. So for the first 2 months,
Yes.
when you're meant to lose the most weight, I probably lost about a kilo
Yes. That's
per month,
Yes.
just working out, no diet change.
Yes.
But then when I changed the way I ate, and obviously I said started with keto,
Yes.
then like I was starting to lose 4 kilos a month,
Yes.
6 kilos. I think the top month I had in terms of weight loss was 7 kilos.
Wow.
in 1 month, and I didn't feel like carnivore was restrictive for me, especially because when I started carnivore, it was from the mindset of, let me figure this out. Let me be, like you said, you experiment on yourself. You find yourself as a guinea pig. And I found that, with my research, firstly on the keto, then seeing how carnivore works, that let me try this. Let me see if I can do this, if this is sustainable. And actually started as an experiment. It was meant to be 1 month of doing carnivore. Then the plan was to go back to keto. And I still haven't stopped that 1 month. That's what I say. Almost 11, 12 months later, still on carnivore and enjoying the benefits of. So I think that's good, as it sets a tone for our discussion.
Are you ready to transform your health and strengthen your faith? Introducing the Bible and Beef community, where believers come together to glorify God through the carnivore lifestyle. Join a vibrant community of like-minded Christians who are passionate about optimizing their health and well-being through the power of meat to finally shed that excess weight. Get exclusive access to our 5-week carnivore journey course, daily devotions, coaching, and so much more. Celebrate victories, share your struggles, and connect with others on the same path. The best part? It's free. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to nourish your body and soul. Click the link in the description and join the Bible and Beef community today.
So for me, just that process that involves bringing animal from live to your plate, even up to this day, in as much as literally almost all my friends, I'm one of the very few vegans in my friend group, are all still eating animal products. I personally just felt like I wouldn't necessarily go and slaughter an animal or want to get, a whole lot of pigs into a room where I'm going to mass slaughter them. So I felt that, from that perspective, I was open to totally transitioning my way of eating.
Obviously, I do have a farming background.
Yes.
Those that might not know, we've got a family farm where we do pasture raise cattle, goats, sheep, and we do some cropping. So I'm able to speak from both sides in terms of the cropping side and the animal rearing side. I like at least that, Zimbabwe, we definitely do more pasture raised in terms of rearing our livestock. And we do, like, the abattoirs are very humane. They use bolt guns and stuff like that for slaughter. My pushback to veganism is that the whole concept of a cow being a sentient being. And I disagree on 2 levels. Firstly, even on a spiritual level. Because God created the earth and gave us dominion over the animals and stuff like that. I think veganism generally wants to equal animals and people. Where they say, no, a cow is has the same right to be on earth as a human being. Where biblically, I do agree that animals should not be abused. I agree that animals should be treated in a humane, and that word I use in inverted commas because it comes from the word human, right? The root word. But treated more humanely, treated nicely, comfortably. But I don't believe that our lives are there to serve the animals, but rather the way God created it in His order, the animals were here to serve us. So that's the first way I disagree. The second reason I disagree with the vegan point of view is that actually when you look at crop farming, and I know that from my personal experience, more sentient beings die from crop farming. So to feed a vegan, more animals die than to feed a carnivore. For example, me, if I slaughter a lamb from the farm, that lamb will last me 2 months. But to do a field of corn or maize, as we call it here, lots of animals die. We have all the mice that die. We have, all the pests that we try keep away. We try keep away monkeys from the field. If you use a combine harvester, actually, as that harvests some of that grain, lots of mice actually killed while harvesting the grain. Thousands and thousands. They can't escape. And it's actually, I think, a more brutal death to be chopped up by a combine harvester than to get a bolt gun to the head. So that is my ideological issue with veganism, that it's myopic in the way that it views the ecosystem. So I agree that, we need to produce grain because it's used, sometimes we use it for feeding our cattle in terms of drought like we're currently facing. So we do raise grain. We try to use safer methods. Obviously in Zimbabwe, we're more labor intensive than we are mechanical intensive. So maybe more snakes and more mice survive. But even then, we look at the use of pesticides, herbicides, all of those things that then cause even more damage. So then I disagree then with the vegan ethical approach. Not talking about even the health approach right now. We're just focusing on the ethics and the environment. How does that then balance? Because if you're preaching that the carnivores or the herbivores, or it's the omnivores, the omnivores are killing the earth because they're eating meat, they're killing pigs and all of that, but the vegans won't take responsibility that more creatures die to feed a vegan than more creatures die to feed a carnivore or an omnivore.
Okay, and I mean, those are really solid points, which I agree with 100%. I think I'll probably start from a view I heard from one of the influencers I follow that I think helped me really start to process this in a better way. And basically she says, as vegans, we don't view animals as food. So what I mean by that is as sustainably as is possible, safely as is possible, my goal is to try and get my nutrition primarily from plants. And so I won't directly see an animal as a source of my nutrition. And whilst it's not as easy to see that way, or that doesn't work out that easy in practice, I think where vegans are coming from is really when it comes down to how we get, or when it comes down to our nutrient needs, what are we doing to get the nutrients that we need in a way that is as safe as possible for the livestock or the wildlife around. So I mean, you are quite right that in modern farming methods, certainly you will get a lot of animals dying. I mean, that is the reality. And I think from that perspective, what I've always, I think, said to people, as I encourage them to try more plant-based foods, is that as a vegan personally, I don't want to be too quick to condemn people who decide to eat animal products, because at the end of the day, if you look at a lot of how we live as people on this earth, it's got a big environmental impact, be it in our cropping, be it in our infrastructural development. You are definitely going to get the natural habitat being affected, right? When we talk about, I think, this idea of animals being sentient, I think we're coming from a place of how can we, as far as is possible, continue to live in harmony with our environment in a way that doesn't directly look at an animal as a source of food. Again, like I said, that won't work out 100% as clean in practice, but I think at a foundational level, that's the idea of it. And so for me, I think what has come to, I suppose, give me peace as I and Ndu are good friends. We've been friends for a couple of years now, and most of our friends eat both animal and plant products.
Yep.
Is that, look, at the end of the day, it comes down to what you feel comfortable with in terms of like how you meet your nutrition. And none of us, whether you are carnivore, whether you eat both animal or plant based products together, or you eat a plant-based lifestyle, we personally, within my group anyway, we're not trying to condemn one another, but we are trying to at least educate one another, and I think respect the way we all live. So I think that's the way I've personally approached it. I'm in a few vegan communities who probably actually wouldn't agree with me and probably take an extreme approach, where they would certainly go into the environmental dangers of animal agriculture, when they certainly talk about that ethical side and animal cruelty and so forth. And I think for me, at the end of the day, if we were to go down that road, anything we do as humans will have some environmental impact on any source of wildlife or the animals around. And so it won't always be as clear. And so probably that's the approach I've taken.
Okay, great. So now the question is also, is there a biblical reason then for your approach to veganism? Is there anything that maybe from the word of God drew you to be a vegan? Just interested to dive into the spiritual side as well.
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think for me, when I look at, what I learn in scripture, I think as human beings, we have a responsibility in how we take care of our environment. And so I think in my choice of living a plant-based diet, I think for me, a couple of points there would probably be, how I source, the foods that I'm getting, and what was actually involved in the production of those products. And I would primarily source my foods from farmers markets and people that I know who are, actually, like yourself, farmers, and how they are actually, managing their farms. So it's really from a place of understanding what practices they are doing to still take care of the environment, I think, around them. So I think more the stewardship perspective of, as people, how best are we taking care of the natural habitats that are around us to obviously support, I think, future generations and support, I think, just a sustainable way of life. One quick story I think I often laugh about with people is, I think for those who are religious or have read the Bible, you read about the story of Daniel and his 3 friends who I think at the time were under the Babylonian rule, and there's a time that for a season they just took in plant-based products, and they were found at that time to be healthier than others around. And so I've had different people say to me that look, that has got more to do with God than it does with the foods that they selected, which I agree, but I would also say certainly the food that they ate had some value to their way of living, to their nutrition, and how they were able to thrive off of those foods. Is it to say that they're necessarily superior than animal-based foods? Not exactly, but I still think plant-based foods, just like animal-based products, have got nutrients in them, and when we learn how to prepare those foods the right way, that will provide tremendous benefits for us. So I think that's probably the best I can respond.
No, we'll get to the nutrition piece just now.
Good.
But speaking on Daniel, I definitely, it's clear that it was a supernatural thing. That everyone was shocked that these vegan boys, after 10 days, were just as strong as the meat eaters. It had to be God's intervention there. Just so that it was still God's intervention. No, I think God has stopped intervening. No, I'm just joking. But that is the funny thing of that story. That is why it's such a good story, because it was something that was out of the ordinary. I think that's how God worked. But that's fine. But you've now segued us into the discussion of nutrition.
So I think I'll start with a funny story that I often hear from my friends. They talk about a cow, that has 4 stomachs, and that whatever it's going to graze on and eat, it's going to absorb all the good stuff. It's going to take away all the bad stuff and obviously get rid of it on the other side. And then what you get, in animal tissue is going to be quite nutritious. It's a candid discussion I always have with friends who ask about my veganism. And look, I think I will start from actually talking about the positives of, a carnivore diet. You will find a complete amino acid profile in certainly your red meats, your white meats, and a lot of other animal-based products. So both of us actually use food tracking apps just to help enlighten us, with regards to the nutrients we're getting from different types of food. So a couple of weeks ago, I just decided, just to find out, exactly what's the nutrient profile like in steak, for instance. And you're actually quite right that with regards to your calcium, your iron, your vitamins, your minerals, your B12, you will get all those in animal products. And by the way, you can also get all those different nutrients in plant-based products, of course with his caveat that you have to actually eat a wide variety of foods. So before I go into just answering the question of why go to so much effort, I will say that nutritional yeast, although used as a seasoning, it's not really something that you can eat on it by itself. Will have vitamin B12. And in my research and as I was learning about different nutrients, I came to find that the origins of vitamin B12 are from microbes in soil. So certainly when your animals graze, they will certainly absorb that. And as vegans, we then have to actually supplement. Okay, so that is actually 100% true. But going into why we would go through so much effort in terms of really trying all these different foods, having to mix and match, I think for me personally, it really went back to, certainly foundationally, the fact that I had this wide assortment and choice of foods that I could select without having, again, to kill an animal to get the food. Does it take more work? Well, I suppose it depends on what that looks like. For you, certainly, it's going to farmers markets, sourcing different fruits from a lot of different places, preparing a lot of foods differently. But I think through my journey, especially from a fitness perspective, I've learned that, with fitness, for instance, one has to take that approach of paying attention to how you're training, paying attention to how you're resting, really understanding different ways of training and how your body responds to that. And there's a fair amount of work involved in that. And if I want to improve that side, I also need a diet that's going to help, support my energy and caloric needs to live a healthy lifestyle. And so when it comes to the work part that's required, I think I suppose, understood that already from fitness and other areas in my life. And taking that whole year to transition helped give me an idea of the work that it would take. You're talking of, just taking out, let's say, 200 gram, 300 gram steak, you're frying it a little
more
bit.
More like 600, but it's okay. 600, okay. Who's counting?
Who's counting? And then I will probably have to prepare my rice. I'll have to prepare my carrots, prepare my lentils, prepare my textured vegetable protein or my tofu. That does indeed require a lot of work, but I think personally I was okay with it, So for me, whatever work would be required to get me to a place where I know that I'm getting all the nutrients that I need without having to get them from an animal, I'd be fine with. I'm not saying that's going to be the same for everyone, but personally, I think I'm okay with. I think what vegans need to understand is that when you're transitioning to a vegan diet, it's, the quantity of food that you're going to eat is going to be a whole lot more. Just looking at it, just kind of face to face. The amount of nutrition that you would get from that 600 gram steak, and maybe that'll probably fill a plate. For me to get the same amount of that nutrition, I'll have to get a whole lot of foods. And so what most people trying to transition will do is they will probably undereat. They're not able to take in that amount of food, and then they'll feel like it's not a diet that they can sustain because they probably haven't necessarily taken the steps to slowly transition and try and give themselves time to transition well into this diet. So nutritionally, you certainly can get a whole lot of nutrients. It's almost like with the carnivore diet, killing many birds with one stone. I would certainly agree. There's a lot more work required on my part, but I was okay with it because I was excited to learn about, all these new dishes that I could try out, all these new foods, and we'll probably get into some of the difficulties of being a vegan in Zim with regards to sourcing foods as we go on with this podcast. But I was really, quite, it was a really good experience, learning about all these different foods and understanding the nutrients that I could get from them, and, just learning to cook in a different way and preparing foods in a different way. So I'm okay with that. Everyone won't be okay with that, but I think it's something that I was willing to do after I transitioned. It took quite a while to transition. With regards to, I'll talk about amino acids, I'll talk about B12 as well. There's a couple of other nutrients we could throw in the mix here, but I'll talk about those two.
Yeah, there's the main ones.
Yeah, so as a vegan, as someone, and perhaps you might still take in a few animal products, but predominantly on a plant-based diet, you will need to supplement your B12. It's an essential nutrient for a lot of cognitive functions, certainly, and other bodily functions that we need. And so it's part of, and I was okay with taking on, I think, that extra work required, in being a vegan, that you actually have to supplement. With regards to amino acids, so one of my biggest sources of protein is textured vegetable protein. If you're in Zimo, other African countries, you probably heard the name chunks, but we are appealing to a wide audience here. So
soy fake meat. That's what I call it. Soy fake meat. Just have the original.
Exactly.
Have the original.
It does have a complete amino acid profile. You can actually take any food tracking app that you like, put in whatever amount that you want, and you will see that it will have all the essential amino acids. The caveat, though, is that it's not going to have the amount. So certainly, gram for gram, if you take a 300 gram or your 600 grams, okay,
big boy.
Certainly with smaller amounts, gram for gram, animal-based products will have a higher amino acid profile, and so I need to take in more of what I'm eating, more of that plant-based source of protein to get the same amount of amino acids as you would. But I address that with the amount of food that I eat. So when it comes down to living as a vegan with a plant-based diet, you have to take in a lot more food than someone who eats animal products would take. So I think with regards to your B12, I think we've established that you certainly would need to supplement that. But with regards to your amino acids, if you're eating a wide variety of different plant-based foods, that whole mix will give you your complete profile.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
This podcast is being brought to you by the Beef and Bible community.
Join the Bible and Beef community, glorifying God through the carnivore lifestyle. Click the link in the description and join us inside the community for free today.
Let's do something that's a bit off script or off key for a vegan versus carnivore diet discussion.
Yeah.
I think it's time to discuss the negatives.
Yes.
Well, let's have a time of confession. I think we all confess the sins of each one of our own dietary choices. And so that you don't think I'm setting a trap for you, I'll start first. Regarding like the carnivore diet, what are some of the religious things that each one of our dietary, I guess, philosophies, I'll call them philosophies, that don't align with scripture. And some of the things that we just generally don't agree with. So for me, with the carnivore diet, I don't agree with some of the science that they use behind it, mostly when you look at anthropology.
Right.
So anthropology being obviously the study of humans. Most carnivore people will claim that, our ancestors have been eating carnivore since 3 million years ago, 200,000 years ago, etc., etc. That our ancestors were carnivore. And I don't agree with that biblically, because biblically I think a more balanced approach actually is a more omnivorous type of eating, with meat definitely there and vegetables. So I can't, as much as I'm a full-blown carnivore and haven't had spinach in over a year, and I thank God for that, I don't prescribe it on people. Meanwhile, carnivore influencers tend to prescribe some of these things on people using anthropology, saying that, wow, our ancestors were cavemen and whatever. That's one thing I can say personally I don't agree with, because the Bible already, when it comes to creation, disagrees with timelines. It disagrees with the theory of evolution, that we're once monkeys, or we're once primordial soup. It starts at the soup, eventually get to lizards, eventually monkeys, eventually human beings. I don't agree with that at all, holding a biblical worldview. However, I agree with the biological side, because people test, right? The fact that I'm still alive almost a year in with no disease, no scurvy, shows that part of the science is true. But this whole backing it with evolution, trying to back it with anthropology that isn't really scientific, I don't agree. I also don't agree, I think, which is similar to the veganism thing, this whole religiousness of it. That people will say, there's certain camps that if you have tomatoes once in a while, you are not a carnivore. Or if you have, different fruits and vegetables once in a while, that you're not carnivore. I believe more of a meat-based approach than a carnivore approach, even though I lean to a carnivore way of living that out. So I definitely won't have the fruits and vegetables, because maybe they don't agree with me personally. But I believe there's that bio-individuality, that each person's body is different, and because of that, they're able to do a diet that aligns more with their bodies. So, for instance, I can't have tomatoes at all, because of the uric acid that actually triggers an old knee injury that I have, and I have pain from that. That's something I discovered through the carnivore diet. I realized that spinach and me don't get along, and we never have. But it's only now, when I know about the anti-nutrients in some of these vegetables, that I can't have it, because it just messes up my system. So, but not everyone will have the same reaction as me. Each one will have a different the So that's for me, those are the two things that I disagree with: the bad, faulty anthropological science, as well as the religiousness of the carnivore community, whom I love dearly. But I hope that this is just a word out there to say, guys, you don't have to be religious about the way you eat. It's not a battle. That's why a vegan and a carnivore can sit together and have a conversation, because it's not about veganism or carnivore. It's about getting the right health outcomes for your body, and for your longevity.
Good. Yeah. I think that's very good. And I think I was going to actually start from that point when I look at some of what I don't agree about, the approach, and I use the word the approach to veganism that I've seen out there. So I think, but after, the time I've taken, through my training and through training with different people, I think, like you rightly said, people unfortunately look at a diet as an all-encompassing solution to a need, and they forget the personal responsibility that's involved with how they choose to implement that diet, or the individuality, as Ndu is talking about, with regards to maybe allergies that you have. It might be the way your system reacts to certain foods. And so I think for me, the first thing that I really want to put out there is that the vegan diet is not a superior diet. Most vegans probably won't agree with me here. It is actually not a superior diet. It is not the best diet. The best diet is going to depend on who you are and what lifestyle choices you make, and whatever food that you're going to take in that will best support that lifestyle and help you move forward in your journey of wellness. I think that's something that's very important to really put out there. Going back to what we said at the beginning with regards to looking at diet as a short-term solution, people who take on a vegan diet, maybe let's say it's for weight loss. We were talking at the beginning of the podcast, say for people who want to lose weight because the summer is approaching and they want to go on holiday, or they want to fit into a certain outfit, take a very temporary approach and probably are not going to get any of the benefits of that diet because they're not taking it from a long-term perspective. And there's actually a very high failure rate for people who try and take on a plant-based diet just purely for short-term goals, or for just or looking at it as a short-term health intervention. Okay, and I think in line with that as well, as I was saying earlier on, educating yourself about what it means to get your nutrition from plants will actually involve you perhaps trying out, different things, discovering, different approaches. And it's going to take time to actually begin to learn, how to take in, a certain amount of legumes in a way that perhaps won't, trigger any bloating in your system. And that can be quite individual as well at times. And
so you're saying it will get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, it could get worse. It actually could get worse before it gets better. That's actually true. It's good to actually put it out there. I mean, there's a bit of experience involved in, incorporating a new way of eating. Where I think I'd probably land on is, again, what Ndu was saying with regards to that religious approach, where in your wanting to incorporate more plant-based foods into your life, and maybe eventually transitioning into becoming a vegan and fully plant-based, if now and again you have craving for some cheese, or if now and again, whether you're visiting a relative or you're at an occasion and someone offers you a muffin or a little piece of cake or something and you eat it, I don't think it's sustainable, or it's probably the right way to condemn yourself. I mean, I think at the end of the day, with both our approaches of eating, certainly my message to everyone I talk to is just to educate them on some of the benefits that they could get from incorporating more plant-based foods into their lifestyle. That certainly won't work for everyone, but yet I won't go and bash someone and say, if in the span of a year you ate an egg on that day, or you ate some cheese on that day, or you were craving chocolate, then you're not a vegan, then you should be ashamed of yourself. I don't think it's the right way to go about it. And also, as vegans, we should never ever look at ourselves as, superior because of our diet. I've only been vegan for maybe about 4 so years, and I recently turned 37, so most of my life I wasn't. And so probably everyone, most people, not everyone, sorry, maybe most people transitioned into a vegan diet. And so it's not right for us to look at ourselves perhaps as better or more superior. That's certainly not the case. So I think a couple of those things are really important to really think about and understand if you are considering becoming vegan, or if you might have, whatever messaging you've heard out there about vegans. I really thought it was important to bring a couple of those things to light.
All right, great. Thank you very much for that.
Good.
Yes, now the messages, don't be scared when you see what the comments are going to be on both ends. But feel free, please make sure that you comment if you have any questions for either of us.
Yes.
We might do a follow-up video, so it'd be good to know what you think.
Yes.
I'm going to address the couple of questions I have from our community. Got the Bible and Beef community, which is an online community of Christians who are following the carnivore diet. So there are a couple of questions I'll bring from that community where it'd be good if you could give us an answer. This first question, actually we've discussed this, comes from Holly in our group, and she asks, shout out to Holly. If a person is vegan for ethical reasons, can you please ask if they're aware of all the death and environmental destruction caused by monocrop farming? I'm not sure if you have researched this, but I found that hundreds of thousands of insects, mice, and other small animals die from the major pesticide use used from standard farming. If they're vegan for health reasons, I'd like to know how they justify all those pesticides in their body. So I guess this was two questions. So we can actually answer the first half. I think we've discussed. But now the second half of issues of, because of how crop farming is done, we all know that it's heavily pesticide and insecticide heavy.
Right.
How do you then reconcile thinking or saying that it's a healthy diet, meanwhile your body is actually loaded with those pesticides because they stay in the plant life for a long time?
Okay, very good. I think so. For me personally, it comes down to where I'll source my food from. So primarily for a lot of my fruits and vegetables, as I've said, I'll go to farmers markets, and I like to normally order from particular individuals if I find that I'm getting really good pricing from a farmer, or I really like the quality of the food. I normally will source from particular people, and through that growing relationship with them, I get to know, I think, where the food actually comes from. This doesn't always work out kind of 100% that, there's 0% chance of insecticides or herbicides. Okay, so I think that's a real reality, an unfortunate reality. I think it would be, as far as you are able, sourcing, your be it fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes, from sources where you've got an awareness of kind of the origins of how that food was produced. If you can, if you've got friends that have got gardens in their homes and they've got space and they actually sell their products, personally, like I said, unless if I'm ordering from like a large commercial establishment, usually if it's friends or farmers, most of them don't actually use insecticides and herbicides. Okay, so I'll normally try and research where the food actually comes from, and look, it won't always be clear cut. I'm not at the moment, I'm not 100% aware, how my system might be affected at the moment. But I think for all intents and purposes, I feel okay. So I think I'm confident continuing to source my food the way I am right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then the last question comes from Ashley. And Ashley asks, I would like to know how their body feels when I was primarily vegetarian.
Okay.
Now looking back, I realized that my nervous system seemed so different. I felt almost hypervigilant. I did feel very clean inside, but I felt like butter over too much bread. Right now, I'm on strict carnivore, beef, butter, salt, and water. I feel much calmer, expansive, and light in my energy. My nervous system is seeming to heal. I have only changed my diet. So she's basically asking, how do you feel? Your body, your nervous system. Do you feel like you're energized and ready to take on life? Because that's what she's saying. She was vegetarian, moved to carnivore. Now she feels very vibrant, very alive. Maybe you can draw comparison to before, after, or I don't know. I will leave it to you to answer that.
Okay, so the best way I can approach this question is to try and think of how I felt before I was vegan to how I feel now. I mean, so when I was explaining kind of my journey towards veganism and what I experienced, I think for me, one of the highlights of becoming vegan was feeling much less joint pain. In terms of energy levels, I think because of my lifestyle and the training that I do, I can't necessarily say if there was a drastic difference. One example that's perhaps maybe in another video, sometime we'll talk about it. I've told friends at the gym this actually was during the time I transitioned to becoming vegan, I seemed to start, doing better in some of the training that I was doing. But this is just me, by the way. This is just me. I'm not saying...
Because my follow-up then to that would be to ask, is it not because you also... Obviously, the similarities between veganism and carnivore is that you're eating clean, right? You're not eating what they call the standard American diet. You're no longer eating the bad foods, right? You're no longer eating the trans fats and things like that, and, but you're now eating a more clean diet. Is that not also attributed to that letting go of the rubbish as well, rather than you purely being attributed to the change?
Okay. So you've reminded me of something. I was supposed to do this earlier on when we were talking about wrong approaches, to our respective diets. So I think if people weren't aware out there, a lot of your Diet Cokes or soda drinks are completely vegan. If you just drink those, I assure you that you'll be very unhealthy. A lot of the foods that we eat out there actually won't have animal products, but if you eat them in excess, you are going to be very, very unhealthy, which probably supports my point that when it comes to the vegan diet, it's not right, it's not accurate to view it as a superior diet to any other. But to go back to what you've just been asking, I would agree. Certainly, I found that I was reducing my refined carbohydrates. I was trying to look for more whole food sources. And that certainly would have contributed to feeling, I think, greater energy. Again, like I said, that is for me personally. In terms of how I was feeling, I think it's important to throw in the reality that I think whilst your diet may have, quite a bearing on a lot of how you feel, I mean, there's a lot of other different aspects to life which we haven't talked about in this podcast, which may be beyond the scope, certainly, of nutrition or fitness that affect how we feel. Depending on the situation at the time, what's going on in the family, what's going on in your career, what's going on in your life at the moment, that probably will change from season to season. And so it's quite difficult to pinpoint a change of diet to necessarily a new sustained way of feeling a certain way. I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
Okay.
So that's just me personally, okay? But my before and after story, if you like, is, look, there are days as a vegan when I will still feel like I have lack of energy. That was the same before I became vegan. Times when I feel quite energetic. The same before and after becoming a vegan. So I think it's important to understand all the other different aspects of life, including your rest and recovery, which we haven't talked about here, which also have a major bearing in how you feel.
Yeah. But that being said, I have to admit, carnivore kind of feels like, in an electric car, you've got consistent energy throughout the day, like from morning till I go to sleep. It feels like I've just got two settings, on and off. I'm either awake or I'm asleep.
Right.
That's one thing that I appreciate about the carnivore diet. It's just that consistent throughout the day, from the moment I wake up until I go to bed, consistent level of energy. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. But thank you very much. Are there any closing remarks that you'd like to share before we close today's podcast?
So I think it's very important for each of us to, as we live our lives and as we interact with people, and share, our stories and our experiences with diet and lifestyle, to really approach it from a place of compassion. And what do I mean? I found the most value talking with people about my vegan diet when I'm not judging, when I'm not trying to elevate, the way I eat compared to someone else, but sharing my story and, perhaps encouraging someone to incorporate, for instance, maybe more fiber-rich foods in their diet, more whole foods in their diet, whether that's an animal product or plant-based product, just living or making diet choices where your source of your foods is more whole and less processed. And I think what we've tried to do in this podcast as well is kind of respect our different approaches and remember that, so we are both brothers in Christ. We are both Christians, and so we continue to support each other and continue to live life together, pointing each other to God. And so just having a respect that stems from our shared value system, I think, is the most important thing there. So whatever your diet is like right now, I think what you can take away from this podcast is that each of us, will be different, and that how we incorporate diet into our way of life won't exactly be the same, and it wouldn't be fair for me to prescribe or to say, this way of eating works for everyone, but to actually appreciate the differences that we have, and in that use your experience and story to support and help and inspire others, and to remember that nutrition is only one aspect of your wellness, and that it's important to try and think about what else you can do in your life to feel better, to feel stronger, to be able to support your loved ones through, your lifestyle choices in general. So I think that's my parting message.
Amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much, Mbo. We appreciate having you here on the Beef and Bible podcast.
Thanks so much.
Where can people catch you if they want to link up with you online, on social media? How can they get hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So on Facebook, if you just look for Mbongeni Gumbo, that's on Facebook. And then on Instagram, if my Instagram handles, if you look for Mbongeni87 or Max Heart Fitness, you'll find me on Instagram. Then on YouTube, just look for Max Heart Fitness. I put a lot of fitness content on there, so please do also check out some of my content there as well.
Yeah, awesome. Please make sure that you check him out and go have a look at his content. I'm sure you'll be blessed. Thank you for watching this episode of the Bible and Beef podcast, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. See you soon.